There is a particular kind of relief some Gen X adults begin to notice after 50. The weekend arrives, someone suggests going out, and instead of feeling excited, you feel the pull of your own home. Not because you hate people. Not because life has become smaller. But because being home suddenly feels better than it used to. If that sounds familiar, the interesting question is not simply, why don't I want to go out anymore? The better question may be, what does home give me now that the outside world no longer gives me as easily? For many Gen X adults, home can become more than a place to sleep. It can become the one environment where there is less performance, less noise, less scheduling, less social adjustment, and fewer demands on your attention. And after decades of work, family responsibility, commuting, managing expectations, and adapting to other people, that difference can matter. Psychologists sometimes use the idea of environmental load to describe how much stimulation, decision-making, monitoring, and adjustment a setting asks from us. A crowded restaurant, a loud gathering, or even a casual visit can require more mental work than it appears to from the outside. You are tracking conversations, tone, timing, noise, social cues, what to say next, when to leave, how long to stay, and whether anyone is uncomfortable. At 25, that load may have felt energizing, or at least worth the reward. At 55 or 60, you may calculate the trade differently. The evening is not just 2 hours at dinner. It includes getting ready, driving, finding parking, being on, recovering afterward, and sometimes losing the quiet part of the day you actually value most. That does not automatically mean you are becoming antisocial. It may mean you have become more aware of cost. Gen X is also a generation that spent much of adulthood adapting without asking for much accommodation. Many grew up with a strong message of independence: figure it out, handle it, don't make a big deal out of it. That can build competence, but it can also create a habit of pushing through discomfort because that is what capable adults are supposed to do. By midlife, some people begin questioning that habit. Maybe you used to accept every invitation because saying no felt rude. Maybe you stayed later than you wanted because leaving early seemed unfriendly. Maybe you chose the busy restaurant because everyone else liked it. Maybe you spent years making social participation look easy even when it took more out of you than anyone realized. Then one day, home stops feeling like the place you retreat to after real life. It starts feeling like part of real life. That shift can be psychological as much as practical. Home gives you control over stimulation. You decide the lighting, the sound, the temperature, the pace, the people, the interruptions, and when the evening ends. In a world where so much of adulthood has involved responding to other people's schedules, that control can feel surprisingly restorative. There is also something else happening. Social rewards can change. Earlier in life, going out may have been tied to possibility. New friends. Dating. Career connections. Being seen. Feeling included. Learning where you belonged. Those rewards can be powerful because identity is still being built in public. Later, identity may depend less on being witnessed. You may already know what you like. You may care less about being at the place everyone is talking about. You may no longer need proof that your life is interesting because other people saw you living it. That can make staying home feel less like missing out and more like choosing what actually fits. But there is an important distinction here. Preference is not the same as avoidance. If staying home feels peaceful, chosen, and consistent with the life you want, that is one thing. If staying home is driven mainly by fear, dread, resentment, or the belief that every interaction will go badly, that is different. The same behavior can come from very different psychological places. So the useful question is not, is staying home good or bad? It is, what am I protecting when I stay home? Sometimes you are protecting energy. Sometimes attention. Sometimes time. Sometimes a sense of autonomy. And sometimes you may be protecting yourself from a situation that deserves a closer look. One of the most useful tests is how you feel afterward. Imagine 2 evenings. On one, you stay home, make dinner, read, watch something you enjoy, or simply sit in silence. The next morning, you feel restored. On another, you stay home after canceling plans you actually wanted, then spend the evening restless, lonely, and frustrated with yourself. The behavior looks identical from the outside. Psychologically, it is not the same experience. This is why the goal is not to force yourself to become more social, and it is not to celebrate withdrawal as if less contact is always healthier. The goal is to understand the pattern well enough to choose. You may discover that you do not dislike people. You dislike environments that require too much performance. You may not hate going out. You may hate losing an entire evening to an activity that gives you very little back. You may not be becoming isolated. You may simply be becoming more selective about where your energy goes. And that selectivity can change the way you design relationships. Instead of a crowded dinner, you may prefer coffee with one person. Instead of an all-day event, you may choose an hour. Instead of saying yes automatically, you may ask whether you actually want to be there. These are small changes, but they can reveal something larger. After 50, freedom may look less like having endless options and more like not having to participate in everything. The inversion is simple. Wanting to stay home does not always mean your world is shrinking. Sometimes it means you are finally noticing which parts of the outside world were never giving you much in return. The practical question is not, how do I make myself go out more? Try asking, what kind of social life leaves me feeling more like myself afterward? That answer may still include dinners, travel, gatherings, friends, family, and new experiences. But it may include them differently. Maybe shorter. Quieter. More intentional. Less performative. And if home has become the place where your nervous system, attention, and identity feel least managed by other people, it makes sense that you would value it more. The point is not to disappear from life. The point is to stop assuming that being visible is the same as being alive. If this kind of psychology after 50 helps you recognize what is changing beneath ordinary behavior, subscribe to Inner Life Decoded.